Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Duclos. With the Central Kansas Library System. I'm your general consultant.
I'm Gail Santee. I'm the current director of the Central Kansas Library System.
And I'm Patty Collins, and I'm the Youth Services Consultant. Welcome.
We're here to
So,
talk to you today about board officer roles. These are going to be a short series of videos, and we're just going to go over the basics and the highlights.
this um, first thing for board chair and vice chair are your roles and responsibilities. So, one of the things that you have to make sure for your position is that you know the procedure of running the meeting. And you make sure everybody knows what's being talked about, like specifically what's being debated on and what's being voted on. You want to make sure all your motions are that you're moving on are very clear and that people know exactly what's happening. You also need to know how to conduct your voting, like what type of voting are you doing, roll call or rising vote or things like that. You also need to know the steps in the meeting, like what do you do first? What are your meeting rules? Like what have you established? What is the parliamentary procedure for what you're doing? You also need to know how to handle points of order and the appeals process because you're a public entity, you're paid for by tax dollars. There's going to be an appeals process at some point if there hasn't been already. And you need to know about your local laws and charter ordinances and things like that, as well as state and other government laws or federal laws.
Yes, and so when you're running the meeting, we of course recommend, as most do, that you use Robert's rules for parliamentary order, but you can use the Robert's rules for small boards, which really relaxes and lowers the formality and makes it easier for you to have a productive meeting. Things that will be important are having a space for public comment and determining what the parameters for that public comment are. We highly recommend that the board adopt a consent agenda. And what that means is that everybody gets the packets in advance of the meeting. They look over everything and they note any questions they may have. And if there is no question, then you rapidly move from past business onto unfinished business and new business. You don't spend the whole meeting hashing over last month's minutes if there are no changes. You do need to officially sign the approved minutes. And so if in January you have a meeting, in February, the board approves those minutes. Also in February, those minutes need to be signed, and that's what makes them official. You should be expecting reports from the director, either written or verbal or both. Um, Different officers and committees will give reports. On the agenda will be new business, and you'll need to note motions and have discussion and vote. Unfinished business is anything that has been tabled or anything that needs further discussion or further research. Also, the order of business will include correspondence and an adjournment.
One part of that process that you need to be aware of is what level of guidance will your library director have in the meeting. With the board chair, oftentimes the library director has agenda items that they know need to be added, and there may be other agenda items that the board chair needs. So, finding out a way, a special form of communication between you and your library director, as they do serve as your technical advisor. They're more likely to know the law or at least know that's not right. And they have the benefit of that 800 number at any point. They can call CKLS, ask that question, and we can provide the pieces of information you might need. But you have to figure out what that relationship is going to look like. give them the responsibilities that most fit their job. But in some places, the library director takes the lead from the chair, and the chair keeps the meeting running, but the library director is the one that's doing the talking and reporting a lot of times. So building that relationship as soon as you become the chair is vital, and that can be started over a cup of coffee the next morning if that's available. So make that plan, and um, make the changes as you need along the way.
One tip I would offer right away, I've done this at every library board I've worked with, and I do it with the CKLS board, is that I sit next to the board chair, and that way then I can quietly pass informational items, or I can work to support that board chair in their job as the chair and running the meeting.
You
So I have
also,
a question. Sorry, Patty.
like, go ahead.
Okay, so what if you have a very quiet personality, but you are the board chair? How do you interject if someone is taking over the meeting?
Managing the meeting is important. Um, If you'd like, you can certainly call one of the CKLS consultants as the board chair, and we can help you practice that. We can help you find that in your own words, and we can help you, like I said, practice so that you're comfortable with what that looks like. Sometimes a gavel does the work for you.
Or just lifting the gavel sometimes will
Mhm.
do that. As the board chair, hopefully you've served for at least a year as a member at large on your board, and you have started to learn which people in the room know Robert's rules and know parliamentary procedure. And so you may have to look to them to go, am I doing this right?
Mhm.
Your library director may have a good handle on that, but if they're also new, that might be a challenge as well. And so we've got documents that you can look at to help you make sure you're running your meeting correctly. But relying on that person and letting them know and say, "Hey, did I do this right? Did we forget something?" Because a lot of times we discuss something, we have a motion in a second, and you're ready to say call for a vote, and you haven't made sure that all the discussion is done. And so those are little things that you kind of write in your own. It can be a written script, but it can also be a little script that lives in your head.
One of the things that we have at CKLS that really helps run the meeting is kind of an agenda template. And on there, it talks you through what needs to happen. You know, if you've got a motion, then you need to have a second, then you need to have discussion, then you need to call for a vote. And it has those things listed in order. And so you may be very capable of running the meeting, but you've never done it before and you're a little bit nervous. That meeting agenda template can really help. And the secretary can use that to take notes. And if for whatever reason the chair is not there, the vice chair can just step right in seamlessly and feel very confident about the running of the meeting.
Okay, so what are some of the things that you may need to bring to a meeting? I know I always want the agenda at the very least, but specifically for the board chair and vice chair.
I know that I need the agenda, I need the full packet. And I may need the previous 2 months packets, especially if we're working on unfinished business. Because I want to look back and see what were my notes on that. I take notes directly on the agenda, and that way then it's easy for me to refer to. So here's an example of what that looks like. Yes, it's a hot mess, but I've got them all on one page front and back, and then I can go back and I can know what action steps I need to do. The library director should also be taking minutes or notes on the agenda so they know what they're directed to do. Definitely bring your copy of the financials with you and have looked that over before the meeting.
Okay.
Handy things to have, and you might not need to carry them in your board packet, but we establish what we call a board book, and the board book is at every meeting, and the library director can be that. You want your bylaws, any policies that have been approved, a cheat sheet of Robert's Rules of Order for small boards, If you have committees, who's on that committee? If you do not have committees, well, either way, you still need the contact information for all the board members because it may be that your meeting is started and you haven't heard from Janet yet. So if somebody calls Janet, this is just how things work. And Janet says, "Oh, I'm on my way." So you can wait.
Or what if Janet's at home and isn't able to come because she's got grandchildren she's waiting to get picked up?
Right. And if your quorum is short, maybe Janet calls in and attends the board meeting by phone, and that way you can make quorum and conduct the business of the library. And CKLS has training on Kansas Open Meetings Act and Kansas Open Records Act. One of the good things to come out of COVID-19 was a change in the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and you can have someone phone in where they can't be present, and they're part of the what constitutes a quorum, so you can conduct business. So
But
that,
you need to know, sorry, you need to know what time they joined the meeting and what time they left,
right,
because
and
you
have
no
phones,
longer have a quorum if they're gone. And so it
right?
just becomes an informational meeting at that point.
Correct.
Okay, moving on. Some of the essential things that Kansas law dictates that you can do, these are devised by statutes. What are the four main things? I know we're out of order, but um we have Patty, you went over the three yesterday. Establish
Oh, right.
policies.
What are the most important things that a board does? They establish policies,
Hmm.
they procure a building site, and that may be a lease or you may purchase a building or the city may give you a building.
Procure funding. So that may mean that the board chair and the library director, once they have a proposed budget, they actually have to go to the city or other municipality meeting to present that budget to get that rubber stamp. And sometimes they may say, okay, well, we need to do some cutting. And so you might only have 24 hours to do that in and do some cutting and represent that to that municipality. But when you take your proposed budget, you hope that you have crossed all your T's and dotted all of your I's and you are ready to present that budget. And
Right?
then the last one is pretty darn important.
It's
That's hiring an enthusiastic and capable library director.
and sadly, if it's necessary to let that person go. And
Okay.
CCOMs can walk you through all of those steps on all of those things.
Yeah. So the last bit that's really important as a volunteer, this is not mandated by law, but we highly recommend everyone does do this. What is that?
That would be advocacy.
Yes.
So, advocacy is a fancy way of tooting your own horn. Your library is amazing. We already know that. You know it because you've chosen to be on the board. Now you have to find a way to be able to go out and sell that to anyone you meet. That might be at the very simplest level. The person catches you after church. I heard you were on the library board. What do they got going on there? It can be as simple as that, saying, hey, you got to get your kids in the summer library program, or they just got the brand new James Patterson. I think you might be able to get on the hold list and maybe only third or fifth instead of 16th, which it might be where you are if you wait. That
Right.
it can be as simple as that. Hey, Gail, what's it look like when it's formal?
When it's not quite that simple, it may be that you have to go around to your community and explain why it's necessary to increase the budget or why you're holding a fundraiser and to replace the roof when the city owns the building. And it could be that you want the county city council or commission, however it is in your area, you want them to pass a charter ordinance to increase the boundaries of the library for recruiting board members from people who live out of town. If you're in a town of 80 people, it doesn't take very long at all to run through everybody on the board. And you need to find new people. There is a way that your city council can legally expand those boundaries for recruiting board members. It does not increase your tax area, but it does for board members. You just don't walk into the city council and say, we want to do this. You need to visit with your community first.
And you
And
also want to make sure that you don't have a quorum of all people that live outside of the taxing district, because people are going to go, you don't even live here. What are you doing
Right.
on my board?
That's right. That's right.
how,
And if this is one of the things that you want to be advocates about, definitely contact CKLS because we have all the information you need and the steps you need to do it. That's what it looks like more formally at your local level. But if you're in CKLS, so that means that if you live in Beloit, you might have gone to Concordia for lunch or for dinner, and lo and behold, there's your elected representative or your state senator. Take the opportunity, plan ahead. What am I going to talk about? But tell them how awesome your library is, or what great new thing your library is doing with the library down the road in a different county, even. Um, that's more formal. We are not comfortable when we think about it at the formal level. But if you've crafted your message and you know what you're going to talk about and you believe in what you're going to talk about, it's so much easier. And just be yourself. You are passionate about the library and let that passion show through. That is authentic advocacy.
okay, thank you, ladies. Um, that's it for us today for the chair and vice chair. Do we have one more thing? Oh, okay, let's go.
You have one more thing, and it's very important. You can't expect someone to show up to the library board and know how to comport themselves unless they have an orientation. The board chair plays an important role in the orientation of library board members. Maybe not your first year, but thereafter, when you get new board members, the library director and the library board chair offer those new board members an orientation. It can be very informal, but I'd like to think that board members show up to their first meeting and they're comfortable enough that they can jump right in and make motions and vote and ask questions. And the only way they can do that is with an orientation. So, ladies, what might that look like?
So they should have, at the very least, an orientation packet, and that should include the minutes of your last 3 months, or a little bit more if you've been having some difficulties with something. Definitely your board bylaws and your library policies. And then they need to be aware of some of the stuff that they have to do under Kansas law. And again, what their statutes say that they're empowered to do. Some of the documents that they're going to have to sign throughout the year, Patty.
Library board members are going to read and understand the conflict of interest. You might be married to the only house painter in town, and your building needs to be painted. So, by signing that conflict of interest, you're going to abstain from that vote that night, and so allow the rest of the board to make a decision. And it very well might be your spouse, but you don't want that impropriety of signing that voting in a way that's going to help you financially.
You
You
can
also
argue in favor of it. You can argue in favor of his business because you believe it's the bee's knees, but don't vote.
you will likely be expected to sign a loyalty oath. And basically, that's the document that shows that you understand the level of the position that you have and that you understand what your duties are, but you also believe what you're doing. Because
Mhm.
that's a little bit of a personal thing as well. And then there's other documents that you have to sign if specifically if you're a library that is using the CKLS online catalog system. That will be presented to you to review and sign. There's a policy about children's internet safety. That's a document that you'll sign. And as the board chair, hopefully, again, you've been here for a year and you've seen those things happen, so they're not surprises. We do have another magic tool that we provide to all of you, and that is the Kansas Library Trustee Handbook. And this, as the board chair, I wouldn't leave home without it. I would make sure that I had it. It has a great index that shows things like charter ordinances, reminds you what the laws are, gives you a basic form of Robert's rules, and also defines all of the other board officer responsibilities. So that's a document you'll receive from CKLS, and that's something that you'll want to keep in your board book for each meeting.
Great. Now, as the library board chair, I know that I'll be really working closely with the library director, and we've talked about that before. The library director will offer an orientation to the new board members, and that's going to look different than what the board chair does. That might be a tour of the library, an introduction to library staff members, a calendar about what we've got going on and what we've got going, and who's coming to visit, or
and the calendar of when things are due.
yes,
Yes.
and that comes from the library director, and that way then your board stays on track and maximizes the amount of money that they can get from the state and from CKLS. That's an important process. Now, you've probably been taking notes, but we have a really nifty slideshow that you can watch, and it has the basic outline of this meeting. And there will be a link to that in the comments.
There will also be other links available, and one will be to the CKLS LibGuides, which has its own section just for your work as library trustees. And this document is actually out there in PDF as well. We want to make sure that you have all the tools at the ready, but the biggest tool is going to appear at the very end of that slideshow, and it's going to be the 800 number to CKLS. And any one of the three of us, or if you call the 800 number and you say, I don't need to know who I need to talk to, our assistant is going to get you to the right place. And if you still have some questions or some confidence issues, call us up, because we're great at cheerleading.
Thank you for joining
for
us, and we'll
watching.
see you for another video.
And have great success in your term as board chair. Bye.
Bye.